Okay, today we're going to be reviewing a bit of an underrated shoe from an underdog brand, the Topo Athletic Specter 2. I picked this up midway through last year. I actually got it before it released here in Australia. I bought it from a site from Hong Kong, had it shipped over because I knew this was going to be a bit of a banger. Has turned out right, and it has now released here in Australia on a couple of sites, so it kind of makes sense to now post the review. So this is that. We're going to run through the shoe from top to bottom, chat about the price point, a few competitors, and let you know why you should consider this shoe, because I think it is very good. In terms of Topo themselves, they are an American brand, which not a lot of people know about. Their two kind of claims to fame are their anatomical toe box, and then also a lower, more natural drop. 5mm is kind of standard, but I do think they have a few 0mm drop shoes as well. In terms of the Specter 2, this is an up-tempo, versatile, kind of do-it-all trainer, similar vein to shoes like the Superblast, the Evo SL, the Neo Zen from Mizuno, I suppose, which is becoming very, very popular. So this should definitely be perking up a few ears. It's got something pretty special to offer. In terms of the actual makeup of the shoe, we have a 37mm stack height in the heel with a 5mm drop. The midsole is made up of the Pebax Peba foam, so the actual branded stuff. It's a beaded compound, quite a resilient punchy foam. Feels very similar to Power Run PB from Saucony. It's got that kind of, more punchy, dense, resilient bounce. In terms of weight, because of the super foam midsole with no carbon plate, we are coming in quite light with 250 grams in my men's size 10, which puts it on the borderline of race weight, but it is still definitely lighter than most speed trainers out there at the moment for me. Running through the shoe, we will start with the upper, which I think is really, really well done. It's not super structured or kind of overbearing. It definitely is on the more speedy side of things, like we've got a bit more flexibility through that heel counter, and there's not any hard overlays, which you would often expect for a speedier shoe, but that kind of ends up making a very, very comfortable fit, although it does still hold on to a nice secure lockdown through the heel area. I think what works in the heel counter for me is the fact that it kind of cups around, and then you do have a little bit of side walling in and around the heel, which means that your foot is kind of nestled into the upper rather than sitting up against it. So although it isn't super structured or overbearing, the kind of shaping of it means that you do just get this nice secure hold on your heel. The padding is really nice. It wraps around the ankle collar, down through the tongue as well. Your foot is protected from the laces, and although the tongue isn't gusseted, it does have two nice lace loops which keep it centered on top of your foot as well. The upper is this nice, fine, breathable, engineered mesh, which feels very nice on foot, and then it opens up into the toe box with that anatomical fit. The thing that I really wanted to point out about this shoe is that although it does have the wider toe box, because of the strength of the heel lockdown and the hold through the midfoot, you never really get any issues with it kind of feeling bloated or baggy, which I have really, really enjoyed. It's nice to have a bit more room ahead of your toes to give you a bit of room to splay, but it's also nice to not have to sacrifice midfoot and heel lockdown. I still feel very secure on top of this midsole. In terms of sizing and fit, I would go true to size. I made a bit of a mistake and went the half size down to a size 10 from my usual 10.5, and I have regretted it just a little bit. I do feel my toe brush up against the top of the shoe, my second toe, brush up against the toe bumper every so often. Not a deal breaker by any means. I'll still wear this shoe happily, but if I had my time again, I would go true to size. In terms of width, you obviously have more room through the toe box and a little bit more through the midfoot. So I would suggest that if you have to wear a 2E shoe because of the width of your forefoot and how your toes splay, this could be a nice option that could give you a bit more accommodation with a nice midsole underneath. There's not a lot of racing shoes or speedier options right now which have a nice anatomical fit, so this could be a really good option to keep an eye out for. Moving down to the midsole, this is where the magic happens. Pebax foam, we know it's really good stuff. Continues to be really good here, and I think they've done a really good job combining it with a nice smooth geometry, which makes it a very versatile, protective, punchy shoe, which I would be happy to use for pretty much every run in my week. I've been using it for long runs, daily runs, use it for some tempo and interval stuff as well. This is a shoe that I can bring to a run club with mates, do the easy running, pick up the pace a little bit, and still feel pretty comfortable in the cool down. Really, really enjoyed my time in this shoe so far. It feels lighter than a speed trainer. It's got that punch, it's got that kind of racing shoe bounce as well, but it's also got the stability from the wide base, has a bit more flexibility, especially once you put a bit of K's into it, and so it doesn't feel like it demands you to run fast, but it also doesn't feel sluggish if you do want to. Don't want to get ahead of myself, but this is definitely in the same conversation as shoes like the Superblast in terms of the versatility, having that structure, that protection, that good level of stability. I really enjoy how this shoe feels, and I also particularly enjoy having a bit more guts up underneath the forefoot with a 5mm drop. Do enjoy just having, yeah, a bit more density there. Definitely don't feel like it bottoms out or kind of becomes a bit empty like some of the 8 or 10mm drop shoes do. Really enjoy that for my stride. I do think there is a small break-in period, maybe the first 10 or 15 Ks. Just takes a bit of time for the shoe to maybe flex up a little bit. Felt a little bit stiff on the first couple, but once you got past that, once you've put a few Ks into it, and especially once you start to take it into longer distances, it really does smooth up and start to work with your stride. I think overall, with the lightweight, with the punchy foam, it really does offer some great versatility with the added benefit of the wider toe box with some good stability as well. This is a true all-rounder. I'm really excited to see a few more brands getting in amongst it because lately it has been dominated by the Superblast. Moving down to the outsole, this is one of the only knocks that I will give on this shoe. It is showing signs of early wear, which is partly a problem with me because I am a hard supinator landing on that outside edge, and I am also using it on some kind of loose gravel tracks on the farm, so the wear will be a little bit faster, but I do think it is wearing faster than other trainers that I've tried as well. So far, I can see the rubber kind of getting quite thin, getting close to burning through, and I am seeing some damage to this exposed foam as well. I would definitely suggest keeping this one on the road. Hasn't really proven itself to me to be something that I can take on gravel tracks, take off road, which is a little bit of a shame. Probably the one thing that I would want to see updated next time round. The actual grip itself though is quite good. It is definitely a more soft rubber, which I do think is why it's wearing down a little bit faster. So in the wet, it's held up very nicely. Haven't had any issues there, but yeah, stickiness, durability, bit of a toss up between the two. Here, I think they've lent a little bit too far into the stickiness. Coming around to the price point, here in Australia, this shoe is going for $270, which I think is decent. I don't think it's absolutely fantastic value because we have got some competition now. Evo SL with a full Superfoam midsole, $240. The Neo Zen as well for $260. It's not as easy as it used to be, but I do think that the performance is there. I think the kind of all-round versatility, the comfort, and also the fact that it's got this niche advantage of a wider forefoot, I do think that it kind of makes sense in the current marketplace. This is a shoe that people can pick up as a wide footer to use for their marathon racing, any kind of racing really, or as an all-round versatile shoe, replacement for the Superblast if you can't get your hands on it. There are a lot of people who could benefit from this shoe, and so I think, yeah, $270, it's not too much, it's not too little. I do think it makes sense in the current market. Jumping through some comparisons to round this review out, we'll start with the Adidas Evo SL, which I think is very similar in its makeup. Lightweight, full Superfoam midsole, no plate. I think the Specter 2 has a better upper, more refined, better fit. I like the roomy toe box. I think this could be a big attractor for a lot of people. Down to the midsole, definitely quite matched here as well. Resilient bounce, but a bit more rocket here, a bit more of a smooth, refined ride, whereas this is a bit more punchy, bit more aggressive. I think it really incentivizes a nice punchy forefoot strike. I would say I slightly prefer the Specter 2 for really long runs and a bit more pace pickups, whereas I find the Evo SL maybe a little bit more comfortable for smooth daily training runs, kind of everyday stuff, although they are, yeah, pretty much matched in my mind. Outsole, Evo SL does pull ahead with Continental. This is showing almost no wear after 110 Ks of running, whereas after 80 Ks, as I said, I am seeing a fair bit of wear. I think the main deciding factor should be the toe box, especially if you want something to race in to stay comfortable over those longer distances. 270 versus 240. I think both are priced fairly, especially because this is a bit more of a niche option from a smaller brand. But for most people, I would probably be leaning slightly towards the Evo SL if you can get your hands on it. If not, the Specter 2 could be a nice recovery. Then we've got the king of the castle in the versatile trainer space, the Superblast. In the upper department, I would say both are equally as comfortable, but a bit more room in the Specter 2. The midsole, you get a bit more stack in the Superblast, a bit more of a stiff kind of prescriptive ride, where I do feel like I have a bit more freedom of movement in the Specter 2, a bit more ground feel, feels a bit more nimble. So I would say for faster stuff, I'm leaning the Specter 2, but for longer, more kind of everyday, daily training stuff where you're just trying to tick along, this is still probably superior. I think more people will prefer the Superblast for the level of protection, but again, for the wide footers, people who want a bit more ground feel are a little bit over the amount of bulk that the Superblast has, then maybe the Specter 2 could be the solution to that problem. Outsole, again, the Superblast wins. I do really wish they had a bit of a better rubber here, but for the wide footers, as I said, if you can't get your hands on the Superblast, the Specter 2 should still be in the conversation. We'll round things out with the Zoom Fly 6, which might seem like a bit of an odd comparison, but there are a few features which make these shoes quite similar. The upper, both shoes I would say are equally comfortable. A little bit of a different approach, but both are very padded through the heel counter. The lockdown is good, and both shoes actually have a good level of width through the forefoot area. Definitely a little bit more in the Topo Athletic, it's a bit more deliberate, but the Nike Zoom Fly 6 definitely has a nice rounded foot shape, which I think is going to work for most people out there, maybe bar the extremely wide footers, people with a very broad forefoot. So I think for most people, there's not really going to be a whole lot of difference between these two, which does mean that the main advantage of the Specter maybe gets lost a little bit. In the midsole department, I would say that these are overall matched. My use of these shoes has been very similar, kind of dominated by the long run with a little bit of daily training, up-tempo stuff. Both feel kind of equally good to me. Maybe a bit softer, smoother in the Zoom Fly 6, relying more on the rock ring that you get from that fly plate embedded. It's not a super stiff plate, but it is just giving a bit more guidance through your stride. Whereas here, I think I'm relying a little bit more on the bounce out of the P-backs, the response out of the forefoot. Definitely getting a bit of rock ring, but as it flexes up, you do just feel a bit more agile. I would say this is ever so slightly faster, ever so slightly more comfortable, but the use case for me has been very similar. In terms of the outsole, I think the actual rubber on the Nike is better than the Specter 2, but I have had some issues with the exposed plate, the exposed foam here being chewed up. So neither are really perfect for gravel road running like I do on the farm, but overall I would say the Zoom Fly 6 might last just a little bit longer. $270 for both. I don't think that you can go wrong with either of these shoes. I think if you need a bit more width, I would go the Specter, and if you like a bit more of a kind of punchy, responsive ride, this would probably be the one to go for. But if you like that smooth, rolling, propulsive feel, you'd like to kind of feel like you're being rolled through your stride, the Zoom Fly 6 might be the better option there. So yeah, that kind of wraps up my review of the Topo Athletic Specter 2. Really enjoyed this shoe so far. I like it when brands put a super foam in a simple geometry, no plate, let the foam speak for itself. It always ends up being a pretty fun experience. This is versatile, it's comfortable. You can use it for long runs, easy runs, tempo runs, sessions, even racing. This is a really fantastic option, which I think does need to exist on the marketplace with this wider toe box. Maybe it's a little bit niche, and I do wish that it did have a better outsole, but overall it's providing a really solid option for people who need something like that or want to try something from a bit of a different brand, bit of a different feel. Really, really recommend giving this a look. Maybe if you missed out on the Superblast or the Evo SL, or if you're just racking up bulk mileage and you want to try something a little bit different.